ThePrint softcover. Today we have with us author Anirudhya Mitra, who has written a book on the biggest crime ever of modern India, that is Rajiv Gandhi's assassination. The book is called 90 Days, the true story of the hunt for Rajiv Gandhi's assassins. Anirudh is a journalist turned filmmaker and has covered a lot of these stories, including the Bofors scandal, the Rajiv Gandhi assassination, the drug wars in India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and has made some excellent films that have received awards. Welcome to ThePrint, Mr. Mitra.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Mr. Mitra, in fact, I was reading the book, and for a reporter, for a journalist who covers crime and who deals with security issues, it really provided a great insight on what reporters go through while dealing with sources, how the information is actually getting on the ground. And I would say that I really learned a lot while reading that book on how to access information, and not just that, deal with reactions after you do the story. So not revealing much, I would ask you to first introduce the book to us a little. If you can tell us something about the book, what encouraged you to write it, because I read in the book that you also said that although you did a lot of stories for India Today about this topic, a lot of the information you withheld. You didn't, obviously, because as reporters, when we collect information, we can't just let everything out in a story, hence the book. So what encouraged you to write the book? And if you could give our viewers a brief description of it.
Sure. The coverage, of course, I did more than 30 years ago, right? It happened in 1991. But thereafter, because it was a sensational story and the event was such that at many social gatherings, friends, acquaintances, colleagues often ask me what had happened. Maybe you are withholding something. You obviously couldn't write everything. So tell us. And generally, I have noticed that whenever I shared something with anyone, whether it is something that I could not write in the magazine or later on, people generally paid, listened to it with a rapt attention, and particularly the generation today, like friends of my children, or people that I work with, where there are a lot of people who are much, much younger than me, of my children's age. I mean, to the current generation. And they often ask me, sir, so what was it like? So one day I felt that why not write a book? The best thing will be that since I have a lot of material, and then I did a bit of a research once again, just beside what I had written then. And I was going through the Supreme Court judgments and the Tata Court judgments and all, because by the time I left India Today and switched on to filmmaking, the case was still under trial. So I went through all those documents, and it was like an eye-opener to me, And there were, of course, a lot of things happening surrounding the incident, which were not really in context at that point of time. The priority was to cover the progress of investigation. So, which obviously I couldn't write about it then. But now, at this juncture, I felt that there is so much probably to talk about, especially for this generation. Who may not even know much about, who will know about LTT and Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated, there was a human bomb before. Nothing more than that. Right. So my idea was basically to write a story. And I wrote the story from my point of view because I thought it was a wonderful journey for me, because I was starting my career in India Today. And the story got massive attention.
Right.
And I was very fortunate,
Right.
And I always relish those moments. So I just reconstructed everything that happened with me and in my surrounding.
Right.
And also a tribute to all those officials who cracked the case, without whom I could not have written this book. I could not have done the stories in the first place. Right. Some of them are not there anymore, So it's basically a tribute to them for the wonderful work they did, and of course for today's generation.
Thank you for the wonderful description, sir. I'll take this moment to just unveil the book here now for our viewers to see. So this is the book. This is the book. The publisher is HarperCollins. The book's name is 90 Days, the true story of the hunt for Rajiv Gandhi's assassins. And Mr. Mitra just gave us a beautiful description of what the book entails. Although I have read the book, and as I said in my introduction also, that I was very, very encouraged in fact, to take up more investigative and take up more challenging assignments like these. So what were the challenges that you really faced while reporting on such an assignment? Because although the book mentions about the threats, the calls that you used to get, I also read about an incident where a car was following you in Madras. So all those kind of challenges that you faced as a journalist while taking up an assignment as sensitive as this.
I think the first challenge was, to start with, nobody was talking anything about it. And my seniors, particularly this whole investigation coverage, was led by Mr. Shekhar Gupta, and he was traveling. He was in Madras, now Chennai, and he was in Colombo, all over. And whoever I was trying to tap all my sources from these security agencies, nobody was in a position to talk anything.
Right.
And finally, I landed up in Madras, and all some of my friends, come sources, contacts, quote unquote, they got inducted into the SIT. Many of them are from CBI and other agencies. But something like, for first few days, I had absolutely no information, except I was only going through the newspapers every day. And almost every day, my seniors will ask me, so what are you filing today? And mind you that I had come from Times of India to the India Today, and from daily to a fortnightly, where every line of information that you publish has to hold for something like a whole fortnight. It has to be exclusive. And every day I thought I have got something exclusive. Next day it was covered, unfolds in some newspaper publication or the other. And I was fighting against a team of Hindu, something, if I may correctly remember, some 22 journalists, including Frontline and Hindu. Whereas we were like me, Kavita, Anand, and of course boss Shekhar. So after that, as the story started unfolding, and with this publication of the suspected at that point of time human assassins bombs picture on Hindu, some information started pouring in, and suddenly the developments, were so fast that it was difficult to keep track of it. So
Right.
first was that there was no information, and then suddenly there was so much of information coming. One after another, assassins were getting caught, they were being interrogated, and the place, the CBI, the SIT office, Malligai, was like a fortress. You just can't go there, and if one journalist is allowed by some friend of his or sources there, it will only open a floodgate for others. So
Right.
I think the whole secrecy that was maintained, the tight security around the place, you just can't meet anybody, talk to anybody, you can call them. From that to the unfolding of the story was so fast, it was so complicated. And my knowledge of LTT, how they function, how they operate, was very, very little actually, So I had to, at the same time, go through a lot, sit with some of my friends who incidentally were posted in Chennai then, in Madras then. So talk to them, try and understand how their mind works. So I think to have a feel of this whole case, the suspected assassins was, I would say, the first challenge, for sure. And also to be able to dig up information that will hold for that long was something again, because I was not used to covering for a magazine. And every time I would file something, like I said, I would be told, oh, this is already old. But and like for the first 7 days or so, which is there in my book, I could not meet any of my sources. And I was just spending
Right.
my time in a hotel. And, India Today takes care of you so well. And suddenly you feel that, there is so much of support and encouragement. But what am I giving in return? Perhaps nothing. But I think it ended well, because that story was received quite well, And somehow India Today does magic to your copies also. So I would say the real challenge was that, to get hold of the information. And then as investigation progressed, there was absolutely no sign of the mastermind. So everywhere the investigators went, the sleuth would expect to find him, he would just not be there. So I
Right.
think to be able to be a party to them, to tag along them, which again you are not allowed, you just can't go because there are security risks. You don't even have the time. You come to know. So
Right.
there was so much of information coming from various quarters, not just CBI and SIT, from the
Right.
Tamil Nadu police, from the intelligence agencies. There's a special Q branch of Tamil Nadu police whose specialization looking into investigating the LTT. So to keep it, tab on all that and collate everything and get what is important for your reader, I think that I would say is the primary challenge.
Right, right. And when there is so much information you really don't know, and it's
Absolutely.
coming from so
Exactly.
many papers, you really
Precisely.
have to filter out, and you have to see what's reliable, what is not, because so many things also do the rounds. I mean, I'm sure in those times it was a little more easier, because right now we have Twitter and
Yeah.
all sort of social media, and so
And
when
we have cell phones, but
cell
at that
phones,
point of time,
yes,
yeah. And I would say the other thing was there that, see, at that point of time, anything you get as an information from whatever sources, you cannot ignore that. You have to go and check, cross check yourself. Now, I
right,
don't have a machinery or an apparatus available at my end where I can investigate on my own, right? I'm always dependent on sources. And
absolutely,
obviously, sources has their own interest as regards to how much and what they will reveal at that stage. So
right,
that was there. And I
right,
think another challenge started after my first big story that called the inside story of the assassination. What happened after that? A lot of it suddenly, a certain section of journalists would chase the SID saying that how can I give one magazine so much? And they denied a few things. They said, no, this is probably a figment of imagination.
yeah,
But
yeah,
incidentally, some 3, 4 people mentioned in our story got arrested after the publication of the story. So then there were another set of questions. So that means the story was correct. And
right,
after that, people probably become more tight plate.
right.
And sometimes people will say, oh, India Today is always 2 steps, very sarcastically, 2 steps ahead of the SIT. So challenges were always there mounting, but it was really fun.
In fact, I'll take you back to that day, the day one. The book
Yeah.
starts with Anirudh opening the
Oh, yeah.
paper and seeing the headline, and the day before he was
Yeah.
playing
Oh,
badminton.
badminton with,
Yeah, with the
Balma.
CBI officer, and all of that. So, if you could tell our viewers something about day one when it all began.
Yeah. So day one was the evening of 20th of May, 1991. And I was in Pandara Park, Pandara Road. Pandara Park is across. So I was playing badminton with Amit. He was SP and he was also the executive assistant to the director, Vijay Karan. And it was very common that sometime, after office hours,
Yeah.
after office hours, we'll go and play badminton. It was just right outside his house. And what happened was that he was playing with another fellow officer who lived in the same area, and I was still waiting for my turn. And suddenly, Amit's wife, Shobhana, opened the window and said, Amit, you got a call. And Amit said that, next time, it didn't work this time. So he thought that she is calling him back that way, and there's actually no call for him. And she said, Amit, please, there's a call for you. And Amit looked at me and he cursed me. He says, I'm sure you have been cursing me for your turn, right? So I join, I take his racket, I start playing. And then suddenly he comes out, and the plan was that I'll probably have some dinner, have a bite with him, and then I'll go back home. And he came out and he said that, will you drop me in Pandara Park? I said, what happened? He said, I have to go visit somebody. I said, okay. I said, where is your car? He said that it has gone to the garage. You have got your scooter, right? I said, yeah. So I took him on my kinetic Honda back of my scooter and I dropped him. So when I dropped him there, it was a house where the Secretary of Tamil Nadu State used to come and stay there when he's in Delhi. It was
Okay.
the house was meant for them. And I found quite a few, wide Masala cars with the red beacon, and things were a bit hush hush. And I said, what happened? Some raid going on? He says, "नहीं, मैं कल बताता हूँ तेरे को." I said, "No, give me some idea." He said, no raid, nothing. The thing is how, and he said, and he just walked into the house, and I went back home. I had dinner. It was already late, and next morning, news reporters, you know it as good as I know that we have to go through various newspapers in the morning to see who has done what, and every newspaper was screaming this headline that Rajiv Gandhi assassinated, and it was brought to my notice by my wife. And then very soon there was a call from office. And normally, again, in a magazine office, no one lands up by 9:30. It was usually post 10, 10:30, 11 around that time, unless there's something happening in the morning or you've been called. And yeah, that's how it started. And nobody just knew what happened because it came so out of the blue. And so that was like day one and the next day. So it was really, and then suddenly, it was like a rewinding me that, oh, so where Amit went and possibly why.
Hmm.
And actually, the director CBI was also coming there. So when he was playing badminton, that's a call came from Vijayakar that, Amit, go there, I'm going to see you there. And I think they were trying to speak to the Prime Minister who was traveling back from Odisha, who was on an election campaign trail. So yeah, all that was happening, and there were a lot of movements, and especially in that Lodi area, the Lutyens Delhi, you could see at that hour that the number of official cars were definitely more than what you usually get to see, and the whole atmosphere, the ambience, the environment, changed to something else.
Right.
But somehow I could not figure out that it could be, something else. No, perhaps nobody.
Right. Absolutely. So when you land in at the scene of action,
Okay, yeah.
what happens there? Because that is where a reporter is supposed to collect all the information, and
Yeah,
like you
okay.
mentioned initially in the challenges also, that
Exactly.
it
See,
was
when I landed first of all, I landed in Madras almost after a fortnight because one story was already happening, right? So I was covering whatever I was asked to from Delhi, and
right.
Shekhar was doing the lead story, and there was Kavita and Anand were assisting him from the Madras bureau. So when I landed there, Sri Perumbudur, there was nothing actually left. And in any case, I was depending on that how the investigation started, what progress it is making. I was not getting anything. So then, of course, I made a trip to Sri Perumbudur. I couldn't make out anything there, frankly speaking. It was still, of course, cordoned off. I met the forensic people once again, but by the time I was filing my story, the photograph had already, was published in the newspaper. So for me, it was primarily talking to a whole lot of people and just trying to find out that is it the LTT? What could be the motive? I mean, we know, there are some what could be the motive, but why suddenly? What is the timing like this? So it was a lot of information coming in at that point of time. So like you said that, yeah, it was my visiting the ground zero was not of much help because of the time lapse, and also the fact that everybody had covered in great details, by then. So for me, it was basically post publication of the photograph on Hindu,
Right.
where they suspected this is probably the human bomb. So thereafter, how they are able to crack, because till such time Hindu published the picture, CBI was very much groping in the dark.
Okay.
They had rounded up a lot of people. They were talking to them, interrogating them, but nothing real was coming out. So that picture, and thereafter the whole analysis going through the Haribabu's 10 frames, I think that's where the key was. And we did come to know about the Nalini's picture with one more girl sitting in the women enclosure, which was a second frame of it. But mind you, again, the first cover story of India Today, in that Shekhar and team had already mentioned quite a bit of it. So I was basically taking off from there.
Right.
So for me, what came exclusive was the conspiracy, how the conspiracy was hatched, when did they start. So that was something very interesting that Prabhakaran felt. I think the planning had started the moment Tamil Nadu was put under governor's rule. And from there, I think they got the first signal that things are going to be, bad for us. I mean, from LTT's point of view. And he called people. He started, he gave them instructions. The plan was kind of being chalked out. So my kind of investigation basically started there, where Shekhar's first cover story ended, I would say.
In fact, as a journalist, I could relate to that line that you have written in your book saying that the SIT and you both were waiting for clues and kind of breakthrough that would lead to somewhere. So if you could give our viewers, shed some light on the key conspirators, the key characters in this book, the killers, basically.
Sure. See, there are two parts of it. One is the LTT cadres, who are all based in Jaffna, and they landed up. So it was a hit squad of 9 people, headed by Sivarasan, the mastermind. Then there was the 2 human bombs. One is, of course, Dhanu, who eventually detonated the bomb and killed Rajiv Gandhi. And there was a substitute who was Shubha. And there were 6 others, including Murugan. And then the other people were from Chennai who were recruited, who were brainwashed about what the IPKF or the Indian government, and particularly Rajiv Gandhi, had done to the Sri Lankan Tamils, and therefore his return is something to be stalled. So the hit squad of the LTT, where of course at the helm of affairs is Prabhakaran, and then there was Potruaman, his intelligence chief, and others. And Sivarasan, the mastermind of the assassination, was supposed to execute this whole operation. And people from Tamil Nadu who will provide them a support base, will take care of their travel, of their movement, the logistics. So I would say from that group, Jayakumar and Robert Pius, who arranged all the logistics, and Bhagyanathan, his sister Nalini, and her mother Padma, from this side, they were the key in the sense that when Sivarasan came, and mind you, Sivarasan had the backdrop of executing one more assassination before Rajiv Gandhi. That was the assassination of the EPRLF leader, K. Padmanabha, which happened exactly a year ago. So he came with Santan, he tested the whole thing, he executed an assassination very successfully, and then he went back, and then again he came back with this new team. So while the new team was already briefed about how to go, with that Sivarasan assisted by somebody called Santan, and then he had Murugan, who was an explosive expert. So Murugan's job was to get Perari Balan and others to decide to design the bomb, to arrange the explosives and other things. And the two human bombs were brought by Sivarasan. Their accommodation, their travel, make them feel comfortable, make them feel at home, was handled by Nalini. So I would say that I think these are the people who played a very, very important role. While the human bombs came prepared with the mindset that we are there to do this, and they consider themselves very lucky. They pay their personal tributes and thanks to Prabhakaran. I think the LTT sympathizers from Madras, whether it was Jayakumar, whether it was Robert Pius, whether it was Perarivalan and Nalini and Nalini's family members, a brother Bhagyanathan and mother Padma, I think they played a very, very key role. I mean, without the logistics they arranged for, the executors who landed up, the hit squad that landed up from Jaffna would not have made a breakthrough. So it was a good, jugalbandi between the two, where they, complemented each other.
Right. So what became the most crucial evidence in this case? Because whenever we cover something, a crime, so there are like a host of evidence that are presented before the court. But one is that crucial evidence that really opens the case. So in this case, what was that?
I think from day one, the suspicion was on LTT, going by that the location chosen was Tamil Nadu, and their safe haven, which is Jaffna, is very close to Tamil Nadu. So you do the whole thing, execute the assassination, and then quickly scoot, go back to Sri Lanka. So the suspicion was on them. There was a threat possibility on Rajiv also. But there was absolutely nothing was really coming to anyone's notice till Mr. Chandrasekharan, the forensic czar of Tamil Nadu, he cracked it. And what happened with him was that he had seen in the newspapers photographs next morning, a camera in the heap of bodies. And he wanted to know what is there in the camera, whose is this camera? Because somebody, the person who owned the camera probably died. Since the camera is in the, it's like stuck in the middle of corpses. So he asked his team that go and get the camera, but nobody could find the camera. Because before that, IG Raghavan was in charge of security of Rajiv Gandhi's political rally. He had asked his assistant, go and get the camera. There's a camera I have seen, collect it first. So that police photographer had collected the camera and taken it with him. Now, next day, when early morning, Mr. Chandrasekharan, the forensic person expert, landed up there, was collecting, and he was looking for the camera, and he was not getting it. And it so happened that next day there was a bandh in Madras city, following his tragic assassination. So there was no studio opened, and the police photographer could not get the camera opened or the real inside developed. So, and he was kind of pulled up by Mr. Raghavan. And Raghavan says, you mean to say you can't find a studio? Can't get it open and get it done? He says, I think these people can help us. He said, go there. So he landed up there. And Chandrasekharan saw the 10 frames exposed. And he knew that this is the camera I was looking for. So when he recalled his journey, starting from the scene of crime, from there to the hospital where the body was kept, and he saw 2 bodies. All the other bodies were already sent to Madras General Hospital, whereas 2 bodies were only kept in the Kanchipuram, the area of Sriperumbudur, in the General Hospital of Kanchipuram, which was that of Haribabu and the human-bound Dhanu. Now, Chandrasekharan didn't know who they were, but he was purely going by the way the 2 bodies were dismembered. Like the abdomen part of the female body was missing. Going by the stature of her body, it was stocky. And everything that he had collected from the spot, he could figure out that this is the kind of cloth pieces I found in the scene of crime, and now I see sticking to her dismembered body in the morgue of Kanchipuram Hospital. From there on, then back to the lab, where they were trying to reconstruct the tattered pieces of the denim vest, and all that. When he did a DNA matching, he could match the blood samples and flesh and tissues of the dismembered body of the female body found that was kept at the morgue. And then he saw the picture, and in the picture he saw it is the same color of the clothes, similar looking spectacle, and her hair and the flower. So he made all this 2 plus 2 plus 2, and he arrived at this conclusion that this is probably the human bond. So he took out that picture of Sivarasan and only allowed the photograph of the 2 women and the 3 women to be published for him to know that, let me see what is the response. And he was spot on. He hit the bullseye. So I think that was something the most crucial, and therefore every single picture from the frame of Haribabu's camera became very important. So initially there was a bit of a misunderstanding between the investigators. I mean, if Mr. Chandrasekharan is also an investigator, but between the SIT and the forensic, that this should have come to us and not gone to the press. But I think at the end of the day, it paid great dividends. And that was the key, evidence from where things started. That, yes, so who is this woman? Who are the other 2 women with them? Okay. And who is this guy who is in this white kurta pajama? So suddenly the white kurta pajama guy became like, the most sought after fugitive.
Right. You also went to the spot, the place where this entire assassination was planned.
Spot, you mean the various hideouts?
The hideout
Yes,
where
I visited all the 3 hideouts from time to time, and I visited them. I mean, one we visited actually about 1.5 hours, within 1.5 to 2 hours after he had fled. Okay. And I also was part of the raid in the Pulicat Lake, where we remember having seen the boat that left, and he was in the boat. Strongly suspected, because he was playing that mind game with the investigators, where he would plant an information, because he had come to know that my communication equipments have been intercepted. They are able to intercept my messages. So he was planting information, messages, which will compel the investigators to think where he will be, and they will go and they will actually not find him there. So to confuse them, to discourage them, demotivate them.
Right. So we don't want you to give out too much, but if you could tell our viewers a little about Mastermind. I mean, I'm not saying tell everything, because I would want the viewers to read the book and see for themselves. But it's very interesting about the Mastermind and the entire chase.
To start with, I'll say something. I guess nobody takes offense of this. Some of the best investigators from the SIT, who I always held in very high esteem, they told me in private that they were like mesmerized by the brain, how the mind works of two people, Prabhakaran and Sivarasan, and particularly Sivarasan. They felt that this is that, once in a million you find a mind like that who can plan, so meticulously, who can think of something always, ahead of others. So he was extremely ruthless. So he knew what he wants to achieve will be achieved. If you go back to, even in his earlier days when he started, one of his primary tasks was to collect fund for the organization. And he would not spare anybody if somebody is not willing to help them. From that to coming and doing something like this, he was a meticulous planner, ruthless, absolutely. He won't spare anybody. I think these are two great qualities of him. He had a very tremendous control over his mind. And, everybody feared him also, is what I heard. So his command over his team was tremendous. And having said that, at the same time, he would take care of reputed people. So I guess he was a good leader. He was a good captain to all of them. But it's just that his planning was meticulous and excellent. And he knew that what would be a realistic planning that he could execute.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mitra. This, again, I'd like to show our viewers the book. It's called 90 Days. It's been published by HarperCollins. In fact, it's a great book if you are interested in this case, since it gives a blow-by-blow account of what happened, how the investigation went on, tells you so much that was not known till now. Also, so many details about the key conspirators, plus a reporter faces on while collecting details, plus the challenges that one faces after the stories are published. So if anyone who's interested, say, in journalism or wants to become a journalist, it's a delight to that person. And plus, otherwise, whoever wants to know more about this case. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitra, for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much.